Hey everybody, Austin Falingo here with JamPlay.com. Welcome to week 8 of creating jazz melodies. This is going to be a fun one. We're going to look at some avant-garde jazz here. It's not going to be too avant-garde because we're just going to be dealing with 2 chords, but it's going to be fun. So let's just start from the beginning, right? Since lesson week 1, we've been talking about a contrafact. What is a contrafact? Let's remind ourselves again. Never mind, I take that back, because this is not, this is a contrafact on this, but this is an uncommon contrafact. And the reason I say that is we're going to cover the Coltrane tune Impressions, also known as Austin Falingo's version, Expressions. So this is a Coltrane tune, a little history about it. John Coltrane was a tenor sax player, one of the most well-known jazz players, especially in the horn community. Total bad boy on the sax. So this tune, I think, was written around 1961, and then one of his most famous albums is called Impressions, which was released in 1963. This is actually one of his favorite tunes to play. So if you've never heard that version, just you can Google Coltrane Impressions, it'll pop up. Very well-known version, great tune. But anyways, like I was saying, our contrafact is Expressions, so we're going to have a little melody here over that. Now, the name of the game today, the harmonic, the compositional technique, right? It's called rhythmic displacement, right? So what we're going to be covering today, and I'm just looking at my notes here, right? We're going to... There's a few things we're going to cover, right? So if you looked at the description today, we're going to cover rhythmic displacement first of all, like I just said. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with a melody. We're going to start on beat 1, right? And then we're going to go to the and of 1. And then we're going to go to beat 2. And then we're going to go to the and of 2. That's where we're going to stop today just for time's sake. But you can keep going. And what I'm doing is I'm going to take my melody. You'll see what I mean here in a few minutes. We're going to displace it by an eighth note every time. And what it does is, here's the thing with this tune, right? Expressions is what I'm calling it, but Impressions. It's 2 chords. It's D minor 7 to E minor 7, right? So here's the other thing about that is we study all this stuff, we look at jazz music, and there's so many chords, right? And that's hard enough. And then sometimes it's like, well, what do you do when there's just 2 chords, right? I mean, that can be very complicated in its own right. So we're not only gonna look at rhythmic displacement. The reason why I'm using rhythmic displacement in this in this lesson here is just to show you like a cool option to take some simple melody and make it more interesting instead of just playing the same thing over, because it's pretty stagnant progression, right? It is avant-garde in a little bit. That's kind of what the historians would call it, right? It's not conventional in a way. We're also going to kind of cover here today like some modal stuff, right? And this is going to be the fun part. So in this track today, you have the melody, and then you have a whole nother playthrough where you can improvise, right? So we're going to talk about that too, like how to approach this from a modal perspective. All right, so let's get started here. So if you look at the chart, Expressions, right, you're going to notice on top, we're going to go through the chords and everything. These are all the chords that we have been going through since week 1, right? So I'll kind of go over that quick. I'm not going to hit that too hard today because we've done a lot of study with that. But yeah, we're going to look at, the different options you can play on the neck, right? But also, first off, all right, so this is important, right? You see, like, when I was getting into this stuff, like I remember seeing this tune. Also, this tune, forgive me, but I think I'm pretty dang correct here. The NPR song, right? If anybody listens to, public radio, sorry, I don't have perfect pitch, right? But, see all those different D minor 7s I'm working on, or I'm using? anyways, if you listen to NPR, it is, I feel like it's like one of the main themes. Good for John Coltrane Foundation getting that licensed. But what was I saying? Anyways, yeah. So when you get into this, right, it's kind of like I remember seeing something like this, right? Right. You learn like Autumn Leaves and Exactly Like You and Honeysuckle Rose, Take the A Train, all these tunes we've been going over contrafact wise, you know, like in the style of. And then you come up with this 2 minor 7th chords. It's like, well, what do I do, right? So tip number 1, looking at the chart, right? Look at the key signature first. And it is good to understand a little bit of music theory, right? I mean, sometimes that can be a dirty word, but, you know your key signatures, everybody. It really does help. And it doesn't take, you know, too much time to figure that stuff out. So when I look at this chart, I go, well, there's no sharps or flats, so maybe we're in the key of C, right? Pretty good guess. We're going to dive a little bit more into that here in a second, but I think that's a pretty good observation. So if, you know, let's talk about modes for a second, right? Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot at the top of this lesson, but it'll do us good when we get into it, right? So the thing about modes too, here's a whole nother discussion, right? You should know your key signatures and stuff, but people I think modes get blown out of proportion. So I said this is in the key of C, right? I looked at the key signature, there's no sharps or flats. Well, what are we in? C, right? So let's just use, you know, 9th position, your big bar C chord right there, right? So here be our minor 7th here today, which is, we're gonna kind of cover this area of the neck, right? Right? So here's our C scale. And if we want to pull up, there's a supplemental material here, so let's look at that for a second. This is our 2-octave 9th position C scale. So we'll pull that up on the screen, right? Pretty simple. I mean, feels great. Comes out of the E form if you're into the C, you know, the cage system. So C, it literally starts on C. There's your C form, there's your A form, looks like an A chord. G form, looks like a G. E form, looks like an E. D form, looks like a D. C form, looks like a C, right? We're in the E form. Great scale, lays under the fingers great. Everything is fingered correctly, and, you know, the notes, we're dealing with 8th notes here, right? So we got... right? 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1. Sorry, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2. There's our C scale, right? So going to modes. This is all modes are, everybody. Like I said, I mean, people think, oh, this is a modal thing, but sometimes that sounds a lot more sophisticated than it is. And what I'm gonna say here now, and really let this sink in, right? We're gonna use a C scale when we play over the D minor 7 when we get to the improvisational part in a little bit, right? When we bump up to an E flat minor 7, we just change the key to D flat, right? Up a half step, right? So what we're doing is here, this tune is essentially in Dorian mode, meaning the 2nd degree, which kind of gives it that raised 6th sort of minor sound, right? So with modes, Ionian is 1, right? Dorian is 2. So all that means, this is the big thing right here. And sometimes like people think, oh, I have to learn all my modes. It's like, no, there's like, I understand what you're saying, but a mode is just starting on a different degree of the C of a scale. Now there's melodic minor modes, and that's where you get real funky, right? But like just in terms of standard modes, it's just starting on a different degree of a diatonic scale, a major scale, right? Just a whole half, whole half scale. So Dorian, you start in the 2nd degree. You hear it? Da, na, na. Use a little chromatic there, right? No. C scale, just starting on the 2nd degree. 3rd degree is Phrygian, right? You get that half step, gives it that kind of, you know, Phrygian type sound. pause, right? And then 4, you got Lydian, Mixolydian, right? You know, and so on and so on. You know, so what we got? Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, right? And we'll just stop there. And, you know, and then there's a couple more, right? But, anyways, that's all that modes are, right? It's just starting on a different degree. So in this lesson, right, we're going to start... we're gonna use the C scale from the 2nd degree, right? And then we're gonna go up a half step, and we're gonna do the same thing. So now you're just gonna use, I didn't write this out, but for when it goes to E flat minor 7, we're just gonna shift this up a half step, D flat. So now, you know, sometimes D flat, it can be weird as a guitar player. We don't play in D flat a lot. If you do, good for you. But, that's kind of the gist of it. So we're in this Dorian mode, right? Meaning C scale starting on the 2nd degree, right? And that's as far as we'll go with modes today. I don't want to waste too much time, but we're going to do that. So, all right, now let's listen to the track. And what I want you to pay attention to, a few things. So the form is AABA. Now you're going to notice it really is a 32-bar tune, right? I wrote it in 16 bars because it's kind of in like double time, right? You're going to notice the drums, right? Instead of, you know, a lot of times, like, this is more of a bebop era tune, right? Avant-garde kind of, you know, so we kind of got that double time feel on the drums, but the bass is kind of playing a 2 feel, right? And then we have just sort of a simple melody. Very simple melody. It's really one motif, and it starts. Now, what I want you to notice when I play this, and then I'll play it back so you can see how I finger it and everything, is notice brain fart. Notice how the melody gets displaced, right? So we're gonna, you know, I'll play it and then maybe I'll count it and show you, right? But we start on beat 1, then we start on the end of beat 1, start on beat 2, start on the end of beat 2, right? And then we go to the bridge, right? Same exact melody, beat 1, end of beat 1. It's only 8-bar bridge, right? Looks like 4 in here. Like I said, it's easy to read. It's a 1-pager. It looks good, but, you know, and then the last A, we start the same thing and go through the cycle again, right, as far as we can go. So what we're doing is we're displacing that melody. Now, the thing is as an improvisational technique, this works fantastically too, because what you can do is you come up with one idea, then you keep displacing it, and it keeps the listener interested, right? Okay, let me check my notes one more time. Yeah, another thing too, one more thing, and this is like a great tip when you're playing modal type music. You're gonna notice the bass. I'm not gonna get too into this, but what I do with the bass, right? Boom, 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 boom. I'm going down to the flat 7, which is the C note, right? So I'm playing a D minor, D, A, D, A, D, A, C, D, right? Sometimes, like, just from a listening perspective, that will really help tell you what kind of mode it's in, right? Because by going back to C, what did I say? We're using a C scale starting on the 2nd degree, right? So that's kind of how you know. It's like, oh, well, you know, C seems like a good choice. So not only do you have the key signature in your favor, no sharps or flats, right? But the bass is implying that, you know, so that's also another way to go, oh, maybe if I start on the 2nd degree, Dorian, right? We're in the key of C. All right, so let's give a listen here. Here we go. See, same thing, keeps getting displaced. Bridge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Run, right? 8-bar bridge. I wrote it more succinctly. Right? So here's the improvisational part, but I'll play it again, right? So we got 1, 2, 2, and 3 and 4 and 1. And of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and right. Bridge. 1, 2, 3, 4 and of 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 2. 1. Last A section. 1. There's like a little improvisational lick at the end, right? But all I did was C scale. I put a little chromatic in there to make it sound a little cool, but that's it, right? So there's our melody. I'll do it one more time so you can see how I finger it. So here's the thing, right? Well, we'll get to that in a second. I'll just play it first. All right, here we go. 2, 3, 4. 1. Now we're going to beat 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 2 and 1, 1 and 2, 2, bridge. Sorry. And a 1, 1 and 2 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and right? So you see what I'm doing? I'm taking the same exact idea and I'm displacing it. Now, I'm also kind of compensating, switching the rhythm up on the end of it, right? But it's the exact same notes. And you see how effective that could be? And that is the whole point of this lesson, really, right? That and understanding Dorian, which is just starting on the 2nd degree of the C scale. So yeah, it's a cool little melody. It works fine, right? Displacing it, I mean, think if I went... You know, it sounds like a skipping record, right? But you go 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 2, 3, 4, 1 2, 3, 4, 1 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 right? It makes it sounds so hip, right? And I mean, like I said, this is a device that's been used for many years, decades. Centuries. And it works great, right? Okay, so with that being said, chord-wise, right? Let's kind of go over this. We've got several versions, right? Now, first and foremost, what's a great one? Let's start in the lower. Well, here, let's start up top, right? So I'm playing my melody up here. So like I always say, you kind of want to stick, if you could stick in one area of the neck, or whatever, and understand that material, which we're gonna kind of get into a little bit, especially with the improvising. It's not a bad idea, right? So our standard tried and true D minor 7, right? 10th fret, 2nd finger is the root, chokes the A string, and then with, 3rd finger, flat 7, minor 3rd, 5th. Works like a charm, right? So that's one, oh, no, no. No. And a tune like this, everybody, a lot of space. We're not doing that. It's just listen to the bass and the drums and the keyboards. There's a Wurlitzer in there too. 2, 3, 4, boom, right, and then we go to the bridge. Right. So I use that chord, right? Now you could see some of these chord options, that are fingered correctly and everything on the on our lead sheet here, right? But another one, see, and they all sound different. Right? And we have that one that we've used before, and then we have this one too. See, they all sound different. They work. Right, and that's, like the G sus, which is the 4 inner strings, right? They're all, like I said, I'm gonna, and remember, there's only a couple of the E flat, as you could see, but it's just, all these just up a half step. So I recommend trying them all. And then we have that one, which is our final one, right? No, actually, we have one more, which we haven't used in this area, but it works great for this tune, and that's your standard D minor 7 bar, right? So it comes from an A form, and then you make it minor, and you make it a minor 7th. So you bar 5, right? All 5 strings, 5th fret, 1st finger. And then your 3rd grabs the 5th on the 7th fret of the 4th string. And then you have your minor 7th, which is caught by that bar, right? And then on the 6th fret of the 2nd string with your 2nd finger, we have the minor 3rd. So like, check this out, right? Just use them all, right? That would be what you call comping, right? Like I said, less is more. I kind of got a little busier as we went. That all has to do with the relationship of the soloist and stuff as well. You know, you don't want to get in the way. Obviously, this piano part, right, in this track is very just pad. There's not much to it. So the guitar can have more room for comping. Listening, right? Super important task here. But anyways, that's our chords, right? So these are all chords that we've covered. Use any of them. Now, for the melody and such, how did I approach this? So, we had our C scale like this. Right? Now, arpeggio-wise, I kind of chose, look, you can do this choice, and I really recommend this. Like, we've gone through all these in different lessons. You could start down here with this. That's not where a melody is, but you should totally see that area. You should see this area. Right? Now, I'm kind of going between this area. Right? So, it's like, here's your D, right? But it's D minor like that. And really, it's like, it's biting it out of the, you know, coming right out of the C scale there, right? So I'm kind of between there and I'm between here, right? So here's my melody, right? I'm here's your scale, right? There's your like extended C scale, and then you have, right? There's your arpeggio, and then there's your arpeggio. Right? Right, so 1. Right, so that's 7th position, and then we're in 10th here, which is easier for most of us. Right, so there's my arpeggios. That's where I see it. Everywhere, sure, we're gonna kind of stick with this area. Now, what I'm doing here is if I think about D minor like this, right? Basic triad. My melody, I'm starting on the 9th degree, right? So, now think about the scale right here. It all kind of sits right in that area, right? So my melody, it goes. So we have 9, 1, flat 7, 5, flat 7, 5. Right? And 2, or 4, 2, 1, 2, 4. And everything's marked correctly, right? But you see what I'm saying? I'm seeing it between, I've said this before in here, but like there's a lot of guitar in this area of the neck, right? So like, I mean, you always go back to major, then make it minor, right? But like there's your, you know, there's your D right there. Like here's our C, right? We're starting on the 2nd degree, so we need the, make it Dorian, right? The minor thing. But, right, that whole area, there's just, it's a very playable area on the guitar as well, right? So that's kind of how I'm looking at my melody, right? So we have 12th fret. You see what I'm saying? It's like, it catches between that arpeggio and this. right? And if you could see that, the groundwork, it just makes it easier rather than just some random weird lick, you know? So we have 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and right? And that's kind of the rhythm we're going. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and you know, 4, and or not in 4 there, right? And then 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, boom. Now the thing is, what's easy about this is it's the same pattern. 9, 1, flat 7, 5, flat 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and the hard part is you got to count to displace the rhythm, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 2, 3. Now just move up a half step for the E flat minor. 1, now catch the and of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, right? Now that's the challenge, right? Even when I was writing this, I was like, oh, you know, it's, you know, but it's a really good, like I said, device to use for melodies. Works great. Now here's another thing, right? I get this question sometimes, like about counting. It's like, well, I don't know. I get screwed up, right? I lose, you know, where the offbeat and not the, you know, the strong beat is, you know, the downbeat and the upbeat, you know, whatever you want to call it. The thing, you can't see my feet here, but keep your foot moving. Remember, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Or sorry, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and right? Even if you keep your head going, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and and that's important. You want to play that slow and really, you know, understand it, you know, before you just do anything else, right? Because that's the whole idea. And sometimes that is, like I said, it's very simple, this melody, but that is the challenge. It's, you have to count and displace that melody, right? Excuse me. Yeah, so like that is pretty much, that's how I see the, you know, the melody, right? So we have, like I said, this is a puzzle piece. Always, you know, be learning your arpeggios everywhere, but we're kind of like, you know, just to recap here, we're between there, right? I put a 9 in there because the melody, I was just thinking of it, I guess. Right? Those are our two areas, right? And that would be our melody, right? Okay. So I hope that was helpful. There's your rhythmic displacement, right? All right, now let's get back to Dorian for a second. So second degree of a C scale. That's all it means. So we know our C scale here. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna practice improvising. I'm gonna kind of play some stuff, I'm just gonna show you the power of the major scale here. That's kind of my point, and then we'll wrap up. I'm gonna play the melody, right? And then the second half, like you guys have the exact same track. Totally, you know, recommend, you know, just jam over it, right? Here's the thing about this stuff too. I get this question a lot. People are like, well, I don't know, you know, I sound bad, right? You have to fall on your face to understand this stuff. I've fallen on my face millions and millions of times, right? I think that's how you learn. So take this, really improvise with it. All we're going to do is we're going to use a C scale, and we go to E flat minor 7. We're going to go to a D flat scale. That's all I'm doing here. I'm going to show you, right? And obviously, let's go back to to the beginning of this, right? This is jazz. We're more sliding into notes. We're not bending notes as much. You have to kind of play the language of it, right? But I've got a warm tone. I've got my neck pickup on, right? That helps a lot. I mean, having guitars like this, you don't have to. I'm not telling you to go out and buy something, like this. These are actually very affordable guitars too, by the way. But, yeah, get in that mindset, right? All right, so like I said, C scale, starting on the 2nd degree. All right, melody, and then we'll improvise, and we'll talk about that for a second, and then we'll wrap up. One on the and. 1, 2. 1 and 2. 2. Bridge. 1. See, it's easier to count like that if you're the way I wrote it. I displaced the wrong thing to write. 1. Now look, you can even, just E flat scale. Right? Now, did that not sound completely like it worked 100% of the time? Sounded super jazzy, might as well be at the blue note, right? C scale, that's all I'm doing. Seriously, I'm literally, and I was doing motifs when I did stuff like 3, 4, in terms of C, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I went to the bridge. Remember, sing what you're hearing too. That's very important. Right? That's all I'm doing. Right out of this position, right? Just start on the 2nd degree. Hear the difference? And here's another thing, everybody. I feel like we're big thinking today, right? You got to be able to hear that too. And I think like sometimes that's really important. This is another question. This is number 3 of the questions I get a lot today, right? This is the 3rd one we're talking about. People will ask me, well, how do you, like C and A minor are the same thing to me, right? You could use the same chords and stuff like, if you're in C, but then A minor, so what I'm doing there is I was pedaling at first the C, meaning just playing the bass note over and over again, so you could hear the contrast between major and minor, right? Now the thing is, to do that is one thing. To hear it is another thing. And I would really encourage, it's so easy. All you have to do is take your phone or whatever, if you have a DAW, digital audio workstation, just take a bass or just take a guitar note, and go C. And then, play a C scale over it. And then move the bass note to A minor and play a C scale over it. And what that will do, it will help you understand with your ears the difference between relative major and relative minor. And that is such a powerful thing. And I guess I said that because a second ago I'm thinking like sometimes you might still hear that as, C scale. might be hearing it as C, but now I hear it as minor D, right? But I know it's the same. And this is what I forgot to say actually earlier. Here's the thing with the modes, right? The fingerings do not change, right? You noticed C scale and then D minor. Same exact fingering, right? And this is, okay, so now we're on to question number 4 today. I'm sorry. Bear with me here. People say, I hear this too, well, I learned the cage system, and then I learned my major scales and my minor scales. Now listen to that comment, right? What I just said. I have to learn my major scales and my minor scales. How many scales are there in major land? 12. How many in minor land? 12. In your brain, it goes, right? It's like 24 scales. No. It's one scale. Or it's 12 scales for the keys, right? C, which is what we're talking about, you know. All you do is if you want to play your minor scales, you start on the 6th degree, and that's your relative minor, right? Like kind of like we just went over with the chords, right? See what I'm saying? And just by doing that, and then you go through caged, right? You go. Make it minor. Well, where's my nearest minor note in a close pattern? Right here. This is kind of coming from another, you know. You see what I'm saying? I'm switching between minor and major. I'm doing it fast just for sake of time as well, so bear with me with that. But you see what I'm saying? You don't have to learn a whole nother set of scales. If you're, you know, I've said this so many times, pretty much every lesson, work smarter, not harder, right? Just having that little bit of knowledge and going, oh, okay, if I just start on the 6th degree, that's the relative minor. C and A share the same key signature, just like G and E minor that have one sharp or something, right? By knowing that, you kill all the birds with one stone, right? And that's kind of what I'm talking about here. It's super important. And now going back to our, you know, what we're doing here, you see what I did? I stayed right in this area. And then I moved up a half step with E flat minor 7, but I'm just using a C scale, and then when it changes keys up a half step, I'm using a D flat, and it works great. I'll do it one more time, and then we'll wrap up here. And we'll get ready for the questions, because I'm sure we're going to have some today. All right, here we go. All right. One, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just place again and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 2. Let's move up a half step for the bridge. Now the end of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Back to 1. And of 1, 2, 1. Right, C scale, right? Straight up scale right there. Works great. Let it rest. Motifs, right? Up half step. Straight up scale, right? And you know, here's the thing when you practice scales. Okay, question number 5, and then I'll stop for today, right? I get this as a question too. You got to remember, guys, music is a marathon, not a sprint. You know, understanding the material in your head, getting it in your ear, the right hand, the left hand mechanics, it's a lot. So you got to be patient, right? And point being, you know, people say, well, I learned these scales and then I sound like I play scales. Well, of course you do. You have to understand that before you can break it up. Like when I was going, that's just a part of it. And that's what I say, like with people, if you get stuck with the scale, guys, don't play the whole scale, just play a little part of it. do it with a cool rhythm. Rhythm is everything. If you can do that with a good feel, you can play 2 notes and you're a king. You know what I mean? It works. Another thing too, which I was doing here, is you can do patterns in scales. You don't have to just play straight scales. So like you notice what I did for a minute here. I go up 4 notes and then I go to the next degree up. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I went, and then I just break it up, but like, there you go. It's like a scale run, but it's not, and that's part of the process. And you have to, embrace the process. It is going to happen. Like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You got to be patient, but, that's just another tip to kind of get out of it. Small motifs within the scale, use the scale patterns, do. And the thing about that is that, remember, great solos go up and down, right? So like by doing that, you're kind of going up and then you can slow it down like I did, right? So, then you go to your bridge or whatever, and you build from there. And that's also, like I said, that's falling on your face. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to hit the wrong notes. You're going to find notes that you don't like, that are maybe fine, but to your ear, it's taste, right? It's like adding, too much salt and pepper or something. Some people like more, some people like less, right? But that's why you got to experiment with this stuff. And I really encourage you, to jam with this track. Here's the other thing too. And I did it several times when I was soloing with the rhythmic displacement, I didn't count it out, but I'm obviously taking the same motif and switching it. And that's also part of this sound, right? Because here's the challenge too, like I said in the description for this lesson. It's 2 chords. So imagine, you play the melody a couple times, then you start soloing. It's hard to say something sometimes over 2 chords, so like keeping all these, rhythmic displacement, scale, cycles, small motifs, like all that gives you, it's just more, tools in your toolbox to build a better solo. So, all right. Thanks for bearing with me, everybody, today. Like I said, expressions, formerly known as impressions, Coltrane, good tune. Check out the recording. Play with this track. You're going to have a track with a melody, without a melody, and then the second half you have, you can just jam over it. So C scale starting on the 2nd degree equals Dorian. The rhythmic displacement, use all this stuff, add the tools to your toolbox with everything we've covered today. And the 5 big light bulb question moments, I hope. So, all right, let's get to the questions. Thanks, y'all. Howdy, folks. And now it's time for the question portion of this lesson. So I hope you enjoyed expressions, a la impressions, right? Let's get a question here going. All right, we got we have eyes without a face here. So the Dorian. Major scale, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. We'd have C major 7, D minor 7, right? So now I'm adding chords to it or harmonizing it, right? E minor 7, F major 7, G7, A minor 7, B half diminished, and then back to C major 7 again, right? So what you would do in terms of the arpeggio, let me just read your question one more time. So the Dorian scale just starts. Yeah, so what you would do is you would just play a D minor arpeggio, right? A D minor 7th if you wanted to go that far. Right? That's without the 7th. With the 7th it would be... right? So, and that's where it would come from, would be the 2nd degree. Because it is Dorian, if that makes sense. But yeah, that would be your arpeggio. And, you know, another way to think about it, like we are dealing with a D minor chord, right? And then obviously it goes up a half step, so you'd use Dorian up a half step again. But, you know, maybe, I guess what I'm trying to say here is don't overthink it. Like, it is a D minor. Like, the real suspect, the real tough thing about this is, well, what do I solo in? Right, so remember, like if you listen for the bass, how the bass kind of kept triggering on that flat 7 or that C note, that's kind of a giveaway. Looking at your key signature is a giveaway. Sometimes in these scenarios, like you do kind of have to mess around, because it could be like, you know, it could be possibly in the key of F, right, which is D minor would be 6, you know, to that. And, you know, the thing is, too, here's one more thing that I didn't really talk about, but, like, if you listen to, I don't know, bands like Medeski, Martin, and Wood with John Scofield, things like that, right? You ever notice, like, how they do these jams and then it, like, kind of gets all over the place, right? And they just jam on it forever. It's because what they're doing is a lot of time they're cycling through modes. And whether it's the bass or the organ or something, kind of hinting at this note or that note, right? It enables them, and obviously just being great players that they are, they have a huge vocabulary, right? And big ears, not literally, but meaning, you know, the way they hear things. So that's kind of where they can like start to switch through that, and that's what keeps those sort of jams interesting, right? But like I said, D minor, it's like, okay, that's what it's in, no sharps or flats. You know, the bass is triggering on the 7th or the flat 7. Just use a D minor 7th arpeggio and just know you'd trigger, if you wanted to solo in terms of a scalular aspect, you'd use a C scale, right? Or D Dorian. Cool. What else do we have? All right, we got P. Simone here. What is the purpose of using so many different shapes of the same chord? That's another great question. So it's kind of like... you always use, you know, the ice cream store, you know, just... There's a bunch of different types of vanilla ice cream, right? I mean, do they all taste the same? Are they all the same thing, sort of? Yes, but not really, right? It's the same with chords, right? Like I said, they're all the same chord, right? But they all, you know, they're meaning, right? Like vanilla's vanilla, right? It's gonna give you the same thing, but sometimes there's little subtleties in, you know, the different recipes, right? That make things a little different. You know, that sounds different than that. That's probably my favorite. Right, so all it is like I said, it's options, right? You know, if you went to the grocery store and they just had one, you know, vanilla ice cream, I mean, life's boring, right? So why not have all the different flavors or, you know, offshoots of vanilla ice cream? And that's essentially what it is, right? And also, we're recapping, you know, these are 4 great chord grips and shapes that we've learned throughout this this live series, right? So it's just good to use them all. And the thing is, too, like, this is a very subtle... You know, I mean, there's nothing about that gets in the way, right? Not that any of them do, because there's no colors or anything in them. They're just roots, thirds, fifths, and sevenths, right? But like I always talk about with style, too, right? It's the same thing. You know, this one's great for R&B. It happens to work in this tune as well. But you know, it helps you learn the neck. Like I said, it gives you different different recipes. Just look at it like that. So we got Sister Christian. When using a motif, do you always like to displace it to add interest, or is it more important to establish a set pattern for the listener? Here's a great way to think of a motif, right? So like when we did some of the soloing things, I can't remember what was it I did. 1 and 2 and 3. Right, 1 and 2. Right, and then we're building on 2, kind of like we were with our melody. Sorry, I can't talk today. When using a motif, do you always like to displace it to add interest, or is it more important to establish a set pattern for the listener? So set a pattern first. Now, here's the thing. Like, you know, when you hear those solos, I mean, there's tons of them. A really great one actually is that just popped in my head is if you've ever heard that Joey DeFrancesco and Pat Martino and John Schofield's in there too. Their version of Sunny. It's kind of an old video. Pat Martino, R.I.P. Pat Martino does this thing, you know, and he does it forever, right? And it's really killer, and he's making a statement. But that's a great example, like I said, if you want to check that out. Pat Martino, Joey Francesco, John Schofield, and their version of Sunny. But when you do stuff like that, right, it's good to add interest, right? So I would say the smartest thing is to establish your motif, for sure. But if you want to build on it, this is a great device where if you do start to offset it, right, it's like, oh, the listener's like, the listener's into it, but then it's like, oh, now he's flip-flopping it. And I mean, that's what's so cool about rhythmic displacement, right? Is like, even, 1 and 2, 1. See, it totally like changes the vibe, but it's the same note. So, I mean, that's why it's such a powerful tool. So, yeah, in my, experience, you probably want to build the foundation like I always talk about first, right? Kind of get the idea laid out. And then if you want to switch it up, you totally can. And also keep in mind, like I mentioned in this lesson, it also works really, really well with kind of stagnant chord progressions, right? So, 1 chord jams like I talked about a couple questions ago, or like, something where there's 2 chords, right? Because that was the whole point of this too. It's, you learn jazz and then you learn all these chords, and then it's like a tune comes along where it's just 2 chords, right? It's like, so what do you do? That's why rhythmic displacement, I chose to do that in this, lesson. It's just a great, compositional, / arrangement technique that keeps the listener interested. So, all right, that's all we have today. Thank you guys. Stay tuned for next week. We're doing, I can't remember right now, but we're going to find out next week. So, all right, thanks. Y'all have a great afternoon.